Hello, everybody, and welcome to Some Patches Required, a show where we hope to entertain and even more hope to educate and, flip-flop those as you please, you on the ever-turbulent games industry. I am one of your hosts, Aaron.
I'm your other host, Zach.
And this week we've got something special. It's another one of our famous guest episodes. This time around we have Cameron, a freelance contract work music composer. Most recently worked on a game called Dome Keeper, just to kind of talk about what goes into composing, producing music for an indie game, and what that whole kind of situation looks like, the intricacies therein, and all that fun sort of how the sausage gets made stuff.
Yep, and for some additional context, Dome Keeper is made by a team called Bits, and I believe that Cameron mentions that they're out of Europe. I think Germany was what was specifically said. So if you want to check them out, check out Dome Keeper, check out Bits. I have played a little Dome Keeper, and it is a pretty cool game. But before we forget, I do want to also say thanks everybody that is a returning listener or perhaps a new listener. We appreciate all of you. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, give recommendations, constructive criticism, all
Leave
that
us
stuff.
a review.
Give us a review. Yeah, I was going through the list in my mind. We appreciate it. It really does help. And we appreciate you for taking the time to listen to our show on whatever form that might be.
Absolutely. Well, if you would actually like to listen to the show instead of us talking about the show you're about to listen to, then I suppose we might as well cue the magical harp.
Hey everybody, as promised, we have a special guest on the show today. We have Cameron, who is a video game composer, specifically for the recently released in 2022 Dome Keeper, which was developed by Bits. Cameron, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
Well, thanks for coming
on.
Yeah.
Wow, that was weirdly in sync, Aaron.
Yeah, well, hey, we've worked on our synchronicity for a while. We're starting to. I think we're starting a band, really, at this point, just to kind of capitalize on how well we speak together.
Yeah, I can feel the chemistry.
I don't want to talk about that in front of Cameron. He'll judge us for our lack of musical talent too much. But yeah, no. Thanks, Cameron, for coming on. Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself? Maybe what your interests are? I don't know. I'm thinking the quick biography rundown for those who may not know you.
Sure. Yeah. So I've only relatively recently gotten into working in games. It's something I wanted to do for a long time. I've definitely been a gamer my whole life. I started off on the NES when I was a kid, and been a Nintendo fanboy in particular. But yeah, definitely games all my life. And then when I was probably about 12 or 13, I started playing guitar and started getting into, all the stuff that everybody was into in the 90s, like Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that. And trying to emulate those guys. And so spent a long time kind of doing my own kind of rock type music stuff. And then, but working in games was always something that was kind of in the back of my mind. I gave it a shot at one point about 12 years ago and didn't have a great experience and kind of put it back on the shelf. Then when COVID came around, I think like most people, especially my age, kind of had existential reckoning where I was trying to figure out what I was going to be doing with myself and like what I'd been focusing on all this time and like what was actually important. I was like, I want to make music for games. So kind of started looking into like, how do you even get into something like that? Mm-hmm. And came across game jams, which I was peripherally aware that they existed, but I wasn't really super aware of what the process was there. But I realized that there was a Ludum Dara coming up, which is one of the bigger game jams, and I joined the Discord, found a team, and that was kind of the beginning of it, and been kind of doing game music ever since.
Yeah, I have to say, I looked through your demo reel that was on one of your sites. And yeah, I know you had mentioned Dome Keeper is the main like project that I've worked on, but I've worked on some game jams. I just wanted to say, I even commented this to Aaron yesterday when I was looking through it. I was like, man, all these game jams look way better than any game jam I've ever worked on. So
our team is pretty crazy.
But back, I composed. Composed is the most generous way I could frame this. I did write-ish music for like a quick couple week game jam for our Ohio University Game Developers Association.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a team and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. That's before I jumped into programming. And I just wrote up this little repeating loop ditty for like a tiny one-stage platformer. And it sucked, actually. Everyone was very complimentary because they were trying to be nice and they knew it was my first time trying to do it. But it was bad. It was bad music. And the game was bad and wasn't really a game. And I did watch through some of that stuff and I'm like, holy crap, these are some really like impressive A, songs, and B, games. And they complement each other well, so kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean our team's incredible. So I mean almost all the game jam stuff has been with the Bip and Bits team, and they every now and again we'll bring on other people. Our most recent one, we brought in a couple of the Valheim devs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
I was just playing that game.
The Ravenhall one or Valheim?
Yeah. No, sorry, Valheim.
Yeah.
Valheim. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel comfortable bragging about the way the games turn out because I'm not actively involved in anything other than the music. So they're incredible, and it's always really fun to kind of watch over the weekend, like it take shape, and then by the time the submission deadline comes up, you just have this really beautiful game, and it's always surprising even to me to see what comes out of it.
So then that's how you met the team that you're primarily supporting. It sounds like was through those game jam.
Right. Yeah. So the first Ludum Dara that I did, I feel slightly bad. I feel like I kind of cut in line or something the way I got into doing this. But the first Ludum Dara I did, I was on another team. We did this kind of top-down, kind of tactical RTS type military game. Mm-hmm. And then that finished, and then during the ratings, so the jam lasts for 72 hours, and then you usually have a couple weeks after that to where everybody plays each other's games and rates them, and then at the end of that period is when the results are released and you find out who won. So during the rating period, I played what was to become Dome Keeper. It was called Dome Romantic during the game jam. And I played that, and even then, like the core gameplay loop was already well in place. Like you can still go back and play the original game jam version and see like, okay, this is the same game, just smaller. Mm-hmm. And I played that, and it was the only game that I played during that jam where I completed it, which isn't always a given. But I completed it and then immediately went back to play it again. Mm. I was like, okay, this game's really cool. It didn't have any music. So what their little pre-build that they use for all their Game Jam games has a link to their Discord. So anytime they release a game, it just has a link to their Discord in the bottom corner. Mm-hmm. So I went to their Discord and asked the devs, like, hey, would it be cool if I made a couple tracks for this game? I really had a good time playing it. And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? So sent them over some stuff, and they put it in the game, and then were really happy with how the game felt with the music in there. And that's kind of just went from there. So, I just really kind of right place, right time sort of thing. I latched onto Dome Keeper real early, and it ended up doing well.
There's no
awesome.
right way to do it.
Yeah, there isn't.
Well, I was gonna say that doesn't sound in any way like cutting in line. It sounds like ambition, right place, right time, and a willingness to put yourself out there.
For sure. Yeah, I mean,
and
you don't get a gig like that if you
rather
don't
than
put yourself in the right place.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But there are also people who have been doing jams for years and years, and really talented people who just are waiting for their break. And I'm just like the first jam I join, I get in on Dome Keepers, so it does feel a little bit like I cheated a little bit or something. But
well, I mean, you don't need to have a reverse survivor's complex about this one. I don't think. I feel like you took initiative. You jumped into what was probably a slightly uncomfortable situation, just putting yourself out there like that, and you were first in line. That's rad, and I can actually quite enthusiastically vouch for the quality of your music.
I appreciate that.
It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, no, your music's great, man, and also welcome to the games industry. We all have imposter syndrome, at least all the sane people.
Yeah, no, yeah, I appreciate it. It does help to know that for sure.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a funny thing of I consistently will be talking with people. I was actually just at Pocket Gamer Connect in Seattle, talking with developers for work, and it's funny how much there's kind of this feeling of like, yeah, we fake it till we make it a lot. I mean, that's kind of like in any job, if I'm being honest, but I don't know that the imposter syndrome hits as much, unless you're in like an industry that you like really appreciate.
Yeah,
but I don't think you're alone there at all.
Yeah, and I feel more confident in my actual composition ability than my ability to like exist in the gaming space. Just because I've been writing music since the mid to late '90s, so like I feel comfortable at least in that aspect. Like I know how to write music, but yeah, just kind of. The fact that I kind of just decide I'm going to get into games and then immediately do it, I think I can imagine that being frustrating to some people to hear.
Yeah. I mean, it can be. I've told this story on the show before, but I did something similar. Didn't quite land the hit on this one, but out of college, I decided I liked writing in English more than C#, and that analysis and criticism was a better space for me. And in the same week, I interviewed with both IGN and Polygon just after graduating.
Yeah.
Didn't quite land either job. So not exactly a success story, but I could see if I had gotten either of those, having a little bit of like, beans, this shouldn't have happened to me. I know how to write. I know how to do, analysis. I know how to do criticism, but you wouldn't expect that to happen out so quickly, and now I'm on the other side of that thing where it's like, I didn't quite get it, so now I'm years removed. But no, I totally get that. But hey, congratulations on it. I mean, it speaks to the quality of your work, I think, and the tenacity that it takes to, again, like I've said now twice before, put yourself out there and do that sort of thing. It's very impressive, and I think you should be proud of yourself, but also do, welcome to self-doubt and things. And also welcome to the Aaron is Jealous of You Club for being able to write music. We'll mail you your card later, but
that audio witchcraft.
Yeah, well, I mean,
the Aaron is Jealous of You card is for being able to write music. I I can play music on a handful of instruments, but I'm not a writer of music anyway whatsoever.
I've got years and years of bad music hidden away that no one will ever hear. But it wasn't an immediate thing to be able to feel confident in.
Is all that music like in a box? You've got a bunch of chains around it. There's a sticky note that says "Do not open."
Well, most of it's is digitized, but I do have some cassette tapes, which really showing my age there. But yeah.
Well, it's all good. We were around with cassette tapes.
Yeah.
I hope everyone that's listening knows what a cassette tape is.
and if you don't, Google it. It's fine. You won't have to worry about them until there's a resurgence of them in 8 years and you start seeing them sold like vinyls.
Yeah.
That
kind of started to happen, I think, in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where especially like kind of lo-fi bands and stuff like that were started really re-releasing stuff on cassette tape out of nostalgia. I don't know if it ever really caught on though.
Yeah, I don't. It definitely not as much as vinyl caught back on.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, I'm the non-hipster that has like the entire collection of Glenn Miller's Air Force bands on 45. So yeah, I'm that sort of asshole. But those I bought at a used store. It doesn't matter. But yeah, anywho, I mean that seems like a how long was it? I mean, you said it was about 12 years ago that you first tried to get into the industry.
Yeah,
and you didn't have a good experience.
I want to say it was about 2010, 2011 or something. I was in talks with a small team about doing an iPhone game. And it was just, kind of naive naivety on my part. I made a bunch of music for them without a contract in place, and then eventually they ghosted me. I don't know if the game ever came out or anything, but it was just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally understand that. IGN ghosted me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming also that you had made some music for them. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
So basically there was some free labor done and no payout. That's unfortunate.
That sucks.
I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah. It's not a big deal. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if the game was ever actually finished.
Yeah.
I just kind of put it behind me and never bothered looking into it or anything. I hope they didn't use the music that I made in a commercial product, but that's just a lesson learned. Get that contract in place first.
Surely. So outside of that, so you are with Bippin' Bits right now in a contract situation.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, can I just say Bippin' Bits is like the cutest name for a game studio. It's just got whimsy.
Yeah.
It's delightful.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I've asked a few times where they came up with it, and they just said it was the least bad option. So I don't know.
Ain't that always
that may or may not have been how we came up with Some Patches Required.
Yeah.
Zach and I had like a full spreadsheet, and Some Patches Required was actually Zach's idea. Both in terms of doing the podcast and the name.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like rolling through a billion names, but yeah, it's great. And it also has like, I mean, bits obviously related to games. But for whatever reason, the way that it reads to me is actually a little bit musical.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could think that's a bop.
Yeah.
And then you have the bip as kind of like a phoneme that resonates with like the idea of a beat in music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny, and I just thought of that, as you could tell, because of this stream of consciousness sentence.
I've actually made a couple of Bippin' Bits specific songs. One was for when the Discord passed 5,000 members, and then one was when it passed 10,000. So
sick.
I
actually did make some music out of the name.
That's rad.
Well, it sounds like you have a really positive relationship with the team, and I think that's great. I mean, that's huge with any job, right? That you like your boss,
especially contract work.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we work great together. And especially now we've done several games where we can we have a rhythm. There's not a whole lot of confusion about what our roles are or what to expect from one another. So that definitely helps making products that end up looking nice, after 72 hours.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Cameron. So they're a European-based team, right? I think I looked them up, or maybe you had mentioned. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought you had mentioned to me. So what is that like? Because I know with Unity, it's obviously a massive company. I work with a lot of people in Europe and now a lot in APAC, but that time zone difference can be kind of brutal. Do you think does that impact anything in kind of a negative way, or is everything so free flow in some sense that like it doesn't really impact anything? I'm just curious what that's like.
I think the relationship of a composer to game dev is unique in that most of it's kind of async anyways. So no, there's a 7-hour time difference, and yeah, there's a fair amount of overlap. They're usually awake during my normal work week hours, so there's plenty of opportunity to kind of touch base daily if needed. But I have a brief of what sort of vibe they're looking for, whatever. So most of it, I'm just kind of doing on my own, and then I'll send them MP3s or whatever they need. And yeah, thankfully, like I said, we've got such a good working relationship now that I generally don't need a whole lot of feedback from them. Or I don't have to go back and keep making a whole lot of changes at this point. So yeah, it's in that regard, it's really nice. I can kind of have a general idea of what they like, and can just kind of crank it out.
Do you
That's
think
awesome.
once you've like worked on a game long enough, so like in this case, Dome Keeper, right? Just listening to the music, I mean, it definitely seems like there's kind of like a thematic sound.
Yeah.
But I, just wanted to ask still, like in your mind, when you're conceiving any kind of like new song for the game, right? Are there like, I guess I'm just curious how you parse that. Like, do you have like notes? Is there just like a feeling that's hard to kind of like put into words that is associated with the game for you? Like, how do you go about kind of finding that sound and maintaining that throughout all of the music that you're working on?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a few things. One of them is definitely kind of that ephemeral, just kind of gut feeling of like, okay, I know what Dome Keeper sounds like. That's kind of hard to explain. Yeah. And then kind of bleeding into that is just my composition style is a good match for that kind of game. I do kind of.
How would you describe your composition style, out of curiosity?
I would say probably mostly simple. Just a few voices and highly melodic. I don't know how good I would be at kind of super ambient type music where there's no clear melodic line. Or just kind of like, I don't think I would be good at scoring for film. Because
I suppose
because either I just am not the right type of composer, or I'm not confident enough to like pull back and make something that clearly fits into the background that you're not supposed to really listen to.
I suppose
think that takes
I suppose that does draw to mind for me, because I was thinking about other video game scores as I was listening to some of your stuff, and I'm like, this is perfectly suited to the type of game that you're working on, right? And the other bits out of your demo reel, which I did watch, you're hired. I was thinking this kind of music works for this sort of game because the music gets to kind of maintain a steady trajectory as the player is engaging with the game, as opposed to a film where, you've got your John Williamses, which have these themes.
Yeah.
There are themes for characters. It's very theme-based music.
Yes.
This is you see the dinosaur music, grandiose sort of thing. And then I tried to translate that to more cinematic video games and think about the ones that use, heavy themed music. Think of your God of War from Bear McCreary, or, Gustavo Santaolalla from, The Last of Us and whatnot. And there are these very clear, like, moments of punctuation, but then there's still little bits of music sprinkled throughout. I feel like that would be really hard to parse for me specifically. But in a game like Dome Keeper, having something like what you've written is a direct, perfect hit, bullseye, straight down the road, A+. But I kind of understand what you mean in terms of, like, this is where we just need a droning sound in the background, to denote something.
I think that takes a lot of confidence and a lot of skill to actually make music like that. For me, especially starting out, I don't feel confident like making something that is atmosphere, because it's not ear catching, and like, at least where I'm at now in my gaming career is like, I want people to like be interested in the stuff that I'm making, and I think you have to be really confident to kind of make something that's going to just sit perfectly in the background and not make people want to go and listen to the soundtrack on its own, that sort of thing. And so I think that's a mark of like real skill, to be able to pull something like that off and feel confident making it, and not worried that you're just gonna like be forgotten because of your soundtrack.
I completely agree with the sentiment there. I think that does take a lot of confidence. I would not, however, agree with like diminishing the level of skill it takes to make punchy, and I would also argue atmospheric music for a game like Dome Keeper.
Yeah, Dome's definitely still atmospheric for sure.
Yeah, it has a personality. It's got a very specific sound to it. And, I'll listen to people talk all the time about NES tracks, which were, made, with these minimal number of channels you could use, minimal number of sounds you could use to compress them onto the cartridge. And they're still absolute bangers. I think that takes confidence too. And sometimes I think, technical limitations can create innovation. And I think even if you're not working with a technical limitation for Dome Keeper, matching the style to the game, I think that still takes confidence. When I did my one attempt, it was kind of a punchy little chiptune style thing, which sucked. It sucked, but it was very simple. It was very punchy. It was very catchy, and it sucked. And I don't have the confidence to do it. So you don't diminish that level for that. But yeah, it's just a completely different style. It's like writing in prose, versus journalistic writing.
Right.
It's a completely different style.
Yeah.
There's a skill set for both. There's a place for both within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my opinion.
No, I totally agree. I think if a game that wanted sort of more of a ambient more atmospheric soundtrack, would probably just go with another composer, and I think that would probably wouldn't be a good fit in general for something like that.
I mean, it's good to know where your passion is, where your talent is, before you jump into any of these situations, which kind of does bring me to a question, actually, which is, how much, because I've always been curious about this, how much do you have any input on where your music is placed in the game.
Yes.
I know that's more of a thing in cinematic games where, there's music meant to punctuate a certain cutscene or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But how much communication is there about where your music is going in the actual experience?
A fair amount.
I would just
Yeah.
I would just add real quick to Cameron to that for people that may also be unfamiliar. Like, what does that process look like when collaborating with the rest of your team?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, it's an important caveat.
Yeah. So with Bip and Bits, at least specifically for Dome, we have a weekly audio meeting where we kind of go over, what happened the previous week, what's going on the next week, that sort of thing, and then talking about actually implementing audio changes into the game, what needs to be relooked at, what's working, what isn't, that sort of thing. So that's definitely like an ongoing thing that we've been doing ever since, we got picked up by the publisher. But just in a more general sense, yeah, I have a pretty good amount of input about how the audio is used. It's a collaboration for sure. Like, the Renee, the main developer, has pretty clear vision about what the game is going to be, what the sort of what the kind of general mood that he's shooting for is going to be. But within that sort of framework, like I definitely have a lot of leeway on making changes, like fade that out over 10 seconds instead of 5 seconds, that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess, does that answer your question? And then
Yeah, more or less. Out of curiosity, how large is the team, including you?
For Dome, I think there's probably been about a dozen people that have worked on it at various points. The main team is a married couple, Renee and Anna, and they did the bulk of the like when they made the game jam version. It was just the two of them. So he does the vast majority of the code. She does a lot of the art. When we got picked up by Raw Fury, they were able to bring some more people on board. So we've had a couple people work on things like graphics programming, like a lot of the shaders, and had another guy that does like a lot of the monster animation and designs, guy that did the background art, and then a kind of a guy that did more overarching pixel art consultation. And then we've got a sound designer too, Martin Kavala, who's worked on a lot of games, I think, that people have heard of, like Sable and
gosh. Now, did they ever tap you for any of the audio design stuff in terms of like post production ish, like balancing or anything like that? Do they ever tap you for anything even slightly like that, or are you strictly on the composition level?
Pretty much just on the music. Yeah. So Martin is a super well accomplished sound designer. So, all the little clinks and drilling sounds and all the crunchy, like really tactile stuff, that's all him. We did.
Is that Foley or is it digital? Do you know?
I think it's mostly digital. Yeah, I don't think he
Okay.
does a whole lot of Foley, but he also, he has a really kind of unique ear and approach to sound design, which is I think is what makes it stand out. Not to diminish the work of Foley artists and stuff like that, because that's.
Oh no, of course
But
not.
he's
Didn't read that at all.
yeah, but he's he's accomplished for a reason. So yeah, we do talk, like we're both on the audio meeting every week. So like we do talk frequently and try to work within each other's skill sets. My music, I tend to, especially for Dome, I tend to cut out a lot of the the higher frequencies. So to give him because it kind of helps with the kind of murky, moody atmosphere of the game music, but it also gives him a lot of frequency range to work with in the sounds.
So
that's really interesting. I'd actually not even thought about that level of detail when it comes to collaborating with an audio designer, and that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to know that there's a whole, I guess I kind of knew, but it's still always interesting to learn more about audio and all the different individuals that go into it. To your point, you're crafting the music for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're making all of the sounds for the game or balancing,
right?
The audio.
Oh yeah,
there are people that do that.
That goes without saying.
Yeah.
Like Chris Larkin, the guy that did the Hollow Knight soundtrack. He did all of that incredible sound design as well. So there are people that are, skilled in both. It's just, it's not something I've ever done. And because I kind of just fell right into like working on this big game, it's not a skill that I've had a chance to develop yet. I would like to get into sound design. Or I guess, so there is a bit of a, like that word can kind of bleed into the music side too. Like I do sound design for the music, like I do focus a lot on the textures and stuff like that of the sounds, but the kind of the quick snappy sounds and actually implementing that sort of thing is not something that I have a lot of experience in yet.
Well, on the sound side, this is kind of backtracking a little bit, but I would be sad if I didn't bring this up. So you mentioned I can't remember if you used somber or moody, or maybe neither of the two to describe the music in the game, but I actually put
I think you said murky.
I thought it was kind of like lo-fi futuristic synth, maybe a little bit more depressed than a lot of lo-fi is, or like you said, I feel like lo-fi is very bubbly a lot of the time.
Yeah, it can kind of reach into, or I feel like people can often use it in a context where it doesn't really make sense. But it's more, when you use it that way, it's more about kind of the feeling than the actual implementation of the instruments and stuff like that.
Yeah, I find your music just is so. One, I love Laser Party. I know that I mentioned that before when you brought it up, so I love that song. But
not to be confused with Ninja Sex Party's Dinosaur Laser Party.
Yeah, not to
or
be
Dinosaur
confused
Laser
with
Fight.
that one.
Yeah,
very very different songs.
Very different sound.
You can play them over top of each other, and they sync up in surprising ways.
Oh, I thought there was a
Satan
satanic
appears.
message.
Yes.
Yep.
That's if you play it back. You have to play it backwards.
We just made the same joke. Yeah, and if you play it backwards, Pink Floyd just shows up in your room.
You summon them,
and they're not even sure why they're there. They're not even sure why they're there.
Yeah, it took
it's bizarre.
It took a long time to get that trick right, but I was glad I put the work in.
Yeah, I'm thankful I got to meet both Pink and Floyd. Like, that was pretty cool. I like both of them.
They are a powerful duo for sure.
They are.
And on a sort of related note, not to the Pink Floyd thing, but to the Laser Party, I really liked the OST Volume 2 from Domekeeper, just because of how like somber and relaxed a lot of that was with like the piano. I love that. I really like, and again, I could be using the term lo-fi as a descriptor here, and you don't agree with it, so feel free to comment. But I just feel like when I say lo-fi, it's got this like repetition that is very relaxing to me that I like to listen to. It helps me focus. And so I think that's why I really attach myself to kind of using lo-fi as a descriptor. And I love synth. I mean, we use synth in our intro. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a good.
Well, technically, Beach Girl used synth in our intro.
Yeah,
and then we used the intro they gave us.
No, I think it's an apt descriptor. It's not. This is going way back to an earlier question that you asked a bit ago about actually what goes into actually composing the music for Dome and how to like keep it cohesive. One of the ways that I do that is through the kind of the plugins that I put over everything. And one of them is RC20, which kind of can add a lot of warping and kind of gritty effects. And I usually just run that on the master bus for anybody who knows what that means. And likewise, there's a plugin called Tape, TAIP, because they say it uses AI to kind of simulate tape saturation and stuff like that. So both of those things I put on basically every track, and so that kind of adds that warmth, that kind of warbly, disintegrating kind of feeling to everything that keeps everything sounding cohesive, even if the synth sounds that I'm using, or in the case of Volume 2 where it's all piano, but the piano tracks work with the synth tracks, and even in game you can turn on both soundtracks at the same time to where it'll alternate between them, and they work well together. And that's because it's like kind of putting the same color filter on two different photos, where like it kind of automatically puts them in the same universe because they have the same kind of gritty textures.
Yeah, you're almost using a lens, I guess.
Yeah,
is kind of the weird political science way I would.
This is for all the young people out there.
Yeah. So
yeah, man. No.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, I was just
no. You're good. Sorry, we've all cut each other off. Welcome to Overtalk, the show where we hope to
But yeah, no, it's
lingering pause,
lingering,
and then
pause.
Overtalk.
It is. I find it like super relaxing, and I think we talked about when I first met you that I was playing Dredge at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had talked about that, and I think you mentioned that Dome Keeper has sort of similar Eldritch-y vibes, and I do feel like your music supports that. Also, for those, including Cameron, if you haven't played Dredge, you should play Dredge. But I think the soundtrack really actively kind of conveys this like weird uneasiness during certain points.
Yeah, that
I associate a lot, kind of with like the I don't know. It's like you said, it's this very like esoteric, hard to describe thing. Which I feel like at face value would be like, why would you want to listen to that while you're trying to like be productive and study? Isn't that going to make you uneasy? And it's like, I mean, not really. It does, but it's hard to explain.
Yeah. So the music in the game, so the game itself, Dome Keeper, is, for anyone who hasn't seen it or played it, is kind of it's split into two parts. There's a part where you're inside of a dome on the surface of a planet, and you are defending the dome from waves of alien monsters using whatever weapon the dome is equipped with. And then that usually lasts, 30, 45 seconds. And then after that, you're digging beneath the dome to try to find resources to either upgrade your mining capabilities or to upgrade your defenses and offenses on the dome itself. There's no danger below the dome. So like the danger comes when you're being attacked by the monsters, but in between those waves of monster attacks, you're safe. There's still a time pressure because you really need to get those resources back up because each wave is progressively stronger. But that said, that was just to set up the context that the music was kind of meant to be played during those more calm periods, more relaxed periods. So there's definitely still a sense of tension because you are anticipating these monster attacks. But while the music is playing, you're safe.
It's a little chill out tent.
Yeah.
Betwixt intense encounters.
Right.
Which I really like. I really like the there's something about composing music that doesn't have its own specific context, right? So if you were listening to Bach or Mozart, it has its own, thing, but you're listening to it in a theater, there's an orchestra playing it. When you're attaching music to an experience, let's say film, you need to have the music match what you're seeing. when you're attaching music to gameplay, it needs to not only attach and accentuate what you're seeing, but also what you're feeling on a completely deeper level with the gameplay.
Yeah.
And I like that approach. That attention to detail is fascinating to me. It's art on a level that I will never be able to create, but I admire it very much.
Yeah, it just comes from a life of gaming. I mean, even when I was making like my indie music, video game music always was an inspiration for me. So like, I think, like even when I was making indie rock music, like in a lot of ways, it was still video game music that just wasn't attached to a game. Not really in like a chiptune sense, but just kind of just in the what's the word I'm looking for? Just in the
evocation of a feeling.
Yeah. Like I think just you could listen to it and tell that I play games. Just like just the application of it.
Well, I think again, application is a really good word because you think about Hyrule Overworld. Let's go to the original Zelda.
Yep.
Original Legend of Zelda, and you get your
yeah.
It's adventure, and then you go to Mario Dungeon.
Yeah,
that haunts my nightmares. By the way.
Immediately, yeah. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to trigger you, Zach. But immediately evocative in the way that it's applied to those experiences. So I'm gonna have to go back and listen to a little bit more of your back catalog, and see if I can pick up any of those vibes from your indie rock band stuff.
Yeah.
But it is just fascinating to kind of intuitively feel what goes into making a scene feel the way you want it to feel, and music has a huge part in that. And I will never be able to write music like that ever, but it'll be interesting to see if I can pick that up from some of your non-game stuff.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know, because I definitely feel it, but maybe I'm just like making it up.
Doubtful, but also possible. We shall see.
There's just a Yahoo in the middle of one of your songs. You just hear the Mario.
I do use a lot of Mario samples.
Oh, well.
Oh, yeah?
Fair enough, then. Fair enough. Well, I mean, you just mentioned a lot of games influencing your sound. I mean, what do you think your greatest influences are? I mean, even feel free to differentiate between your, work in game dev versus your work outside when you're just making music. I'd be curious to know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, especially for Dome Keeper, Boards of Canada was a huge one. And they've always been.
What was that game?
No, Boards of Canada is a group.
Okay, I haven't heard of them. I'll have to look them up. I'm always looking for new bands.
Yeah,
is that Board BOARD?
Yeah, like film Board of Canada.
Oh, electronic duo.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so they've always been a huge influence on the atmosphere of my music, and there are a couple dumb tracks where I almost felt like, okay, like this is a little too on the nose, but I did it anyways. But yeah, so and then
well, I put a Bo Burnham clip at the end of one of our episodes.
Yeah.
So that's as on the nose as it can get.
Yeah. And then Metroid, I guess, for Dome Keeper specifically, like I didn't do anything that was like obviously copying a Metroid type sound, but definitely that the feeling of loneliness and the kind of atmosphere was something that I wanted to capture that was very similar to the way Metroid soundtracks feel to me. So those
isolation,
yeah, for sure. And that's for Dome Keeper. But it just more in general. it's definitely cliche, but Uematsu, the composer for Final Fantasy.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, he's an icon for a reason. So
Yes.
like big time into the old, especially the PlayStation Final Fantasies were a huge influence on me. A lot of there are probably a lot of composers that influenced me that I don't know their names. But kind of all sorts of stuff from like the NES era and Super Nintendo. Soyo Oka, who did Mario Kart, the original Mario Kart soundtrack. She did the Sim City for the Super Nintendo soundtrack, which is such a weird and like interesting soundtrack. Lots of kind of Japanese jazz fusion type stuff, like the F-Zero soundtrack, for instance, is like I'm not well versed enough in jazz theory to really pull any of that stuff off, but I feel like a lot of the rhythms and syncopations and stuff like that still affect my compositions.
Yep.
Yeah. What else? I think more modern.
I feel like city pop is something. I don't know if you've listened to that, but just given at least some of the vibes that your music gives to me, I feel like city pop is something.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say it influenced Dome Keeper. I feel like city pop's maybe a little too bright, but
yeah. No, I've listened to a lot of it though, for sure.
Yeah.
If I can give you one band recommendation, as we draw ever closer to the ending of this conversation, which, to be honest with you, I would rather not end. I'm having a really good time talking with you guys. But to give one band recommendation, just in case you haven't listened to them, listen to Snarky Puppy.
Okay, yeah, I know Snarky Puppy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They're a fantastic. I would call them like new jazz, band, and they're just exceptional. Especially the entire album "We Like It Here" is like a winner on every track.
Yeah, those guys are prodigies for
there's
sure.
Very few. They're insane. Michael League is a maniac. I don't know how well that would translate to anything, but the frenetic energy that comes from most of their music, I feel like could be adapted into something like that. I'm not giving you advice, by the way. No. You know what you're doing. I know nothing. I just know what music I like to listen to. But Snarky Puppy is like a bizarrely energetic jazz group that doesn't follow any rules. In a way that I find interesting.
There are absolutely lessons to learn from bands like that, even if you're not like trying to recreate their vibe. But yeah, just any sort of tips you can take on what weird, transitions and modulations and stuff like that works in all sorts of contexts.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine so, because I will never be able to create it.
I think you just really need to make Dome Keeper sound more like the Witcher 3 soundtrack with a lot of that weird Slavic.
Yeah.
I'm joking, of course. I do love that soundtrack though. That sound
cool.
is so different than what I feel like I'm used to hearing.
Yeah, so the volume 3, it won't be like the Witcher soundtrack, but I think it might be a little closer to that than you might expect.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, interesting. I'll have to make sure to keep my eyes out then.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be more focused on voice and stuff like that.
Well, I guess
awesome.
I guess on that note, so we don't keep you too long, we'll start winding down with some of the questions. But looking forward with the projects that you're working on, is there anything that you'd like to call out? Anything that you're excited about that might not be your project, but you think people should look into?
Or any band recommendations.
Yeah, we'll take any and all.
Yeah. Let's see. As far as my stuff, work continues on Dome Keeper. We're definitely continuing to work on more content for it. We have another Keeper coming out, which will. I didn't actually explain this earlier. The reason that there are multiple volumes to the soundtrack is that each player character has their own unique soundtrack. So
Seriously?
yeah,
Okay, that makes sense with the images on your YouTube.
yeah. So
And I was like, are there two characters?
the engineer is the main, or the character you start playing as. They're the simplest.
He's the orange one, right?
Right.
Okay.
And so that's the one that has the most of the music. Like if you've heard any music from Dome Keeper, you've probably heard tracks from Volume 1, which is assigned to the engineer. The second one is the assessor, which is the second character that came out about a month or two after the game released. And then the third character is one that I can't talk about a whole lot yet, but is going to be kind of more a bit more of a kind of a chaotic, weird energy to it. So it's going to have a new soundtrack that goes along with it. That's going to, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, have more like a kind of voice vocal focus to this soundtrack.
I guess to add to that just real quick, none of the other two have vocals in them, right?
No.
I don't think I got all the way through Volume 2, but I didn't think Volume 1 did.
Yeah, so Volume 1 is, I used almost exclusively a synthesizer called Pigments for Volume 1. The second volume is all piano. Even the stuff that doesn't sound like piano is like manipulated piano sounds, except for the very last track where it has some percussion and stuff. And then, so Volume 3 is going to be kind of similar in the way that I'm going to limit the kind of palette that I'm painting with. So it's
I like that metaphor.
Yeah. So that's Dome. We just finished up a Ludum Dara recently, where we made a game that we were really happy with, that might be developed further into definitely not a big game like Dome, but more smaller release. And that would be really cool because I really like that game a lot. It's called Ravenhaul, Haul, where you're kind of running a little bird delivery service, trying to gain the attention of the queen, so she'll start using you as her primary delivery guy.
That's cute.
Yeah, and it's fun.
That's fun. That's a very Japanese concept.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Yeah. And it's really like atmospheric, but like chill kind of game. It's really nice, and got to break out the guitar for that soundtrack.
Oh, nice.
So I'd really like to make some more music for that if it does go further. As to games that are coming out, I'm sure there's stuff that I'm just not thinking of at the moment. I'm eyeballs deep in Tears of the Kingdom right now, so it's like,
oh yeah, so are we all,
occupying my my head space there. And plus my backlog is so huge.
I'm looking at, I have a set of vinyls for The Last of Us Part 2 sitting like 2 feet away from me, and it's still inside of its cardboard box to protect it.
Yeah, and
I'm like, if I rotate that, I have to okay, well, I'm thinking R1, and then
oh my gosh,
rotate two times.
Don't do this.
And then wait, and then it attaches, and no. So I'm with you. This is what's going on in the back of my head while I'm.
Let's see. There is a Raw Fury game that's coming out called Friends vs. Friends. If you like kind of team shooter type stuff.
No, but so I'm actually going to ask for band recommendations, unless you had another follow-up that my vamping has allowed you the opportunity to kind of fill in.
Band recommendations, and that's so. Over the past several years, I've really gotten into kind of like international music. So I'm like always listening to like African stuff and like South American music and stuff like that. So it's, and a lot of it I don't know how to pronounce correctly, but definitely like sort of any sort of desert blues from Africa. Like there's a lot of bands, and to be fair, they all kind of sound very similar. But like Tanariwen has been a big one that I listen to all the time. And let's see. Oh yeah, I should have Oh, Krungbin. They're from Houston. Have you?
I have not heard of them.
I'd have to spell it out. KHRUANGBIN. They take kind of a lot of those sort of international music influences and meld them together, and these into sort of this like really chill kind of funk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that.
And they're really good. So can definitely recommend them. They just did an album together with this the son of this really influential and really good African guitar player called Ali Farka Toure. And his son's name is View Farka Toure. And so they did a collaboration with him doing kind of reworks of his father's some of his father's music, and it's fantastic.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And on the international note, I just watched the Eurovision finals with a friend.
Yeah.
Last weekend, so I'll have to shoot you the link to Cha 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 by Finland, which is this strange metal pop. It's a lot of different things. I forgot how it was like self-described, but it's I don't know if it'll be your thing ultimately, but it's a trip regardless.
Yeah. No, I'd definitely be interested in checking it out.
Yeah. Well, I think then before we ask for some of your socials and links like that, we like to typically, when we have guests on, just ask what their advice to people trying to get into games might be. I guess in this case, we can even branch that out into like music. If you have any like helpful advice that maybe you would have told like your younger self that would resonate, or I don't know. I feel like everybody kind of has a thing of like, if I was to recommend like one thing to people trying to kind of follow in my footsteps in some way, like this is the most impactful lesson I've learned so far. What would that kind of be for you?
For games, game jams, 100%. Like join a team that there are game jams happening all the time, and it doesn't have to be the big ones like GMTK or Ludum Dare. There all sorts of small ones. Just find a team, and that's the best way to like watch the process. You can see a game, spawn out of nothing, and then by the end of the weekend there's something you can sit down and play, which you're not that's an experience you're not really going to get otherwise. You get to network with people who are interested in games or actively making them. So yeah, like if you want to get into games, like you can take classes and stuff like that, but network with people who are already doing it and join a game jam team and just make something. That way you've got by the end of the weekend you've got a little thing for your portfolio. So like just do a few of those and you'll have a nice little like thing that you can give to people and be like, here's what I'm capable of. When I first started out, when I decided I was gonna try to get into games, like I started making like fake game soundtracks, and that's fine. Like it's definitely a good way to kind of get your beak wet, but yeah, like I think if I'd known how beneficial jams were, like that, I would have just jumped right into it.
I actually want to add on to your thing too, just from my perspective, as I don't really do very much 3D art anymore, and part of it is probably sort of for what you're talking about. I found that making things for the sake of making things is hard.
Yes.
But when you're part of a project where you're not necessarily just held accountable, but there's a timeline, you're held accountable, you're being social with people, that is very conducive to kind of creating things quickly and being, actually finishing them. I found even with mods that I've joined, because I've joined some larger like Skyrim mods, I find those are a little bit hard to even follow up on because there's not really like a team camaraderie or like single I mean, there's a single goal, but it's just different. You still kind of feel like you're crafting stuff for the sake of crafting stuff for people you don't really know.
Yeah.
So no, I agree. I agree with you. I think that's honestly a pretty fantastic way for at least how I'm built.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
You
have a weekend or a week or whatever the length of the jam is, and at the end of that there's going to be a product. It might not be any good, and that doesn't matter. Like, even as far as so the other side of that question was just as far as getting into music. The biggest piece of advice I can give is don't be afraid to make something that sounds terrible. Because you're probably going to, but B, it's it doesn't matter. Like, there's no, it's a low stakes thing to try. It's never been easier to make music digitally. There's all sorts of, like Reaper, you can just download and use that, and as far as I understand, indefinitely before you have to pay for it. So like, just get some stuff. There's so many free resources for digital instruments and stuff. Like, just make something, and it doesn't have to be good, and it'll take a while to get to find your feet, but just do it. Like, it doesn't have to. You don't have to come out the gate swinging.
Yeah. No, I think that definitely makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, and it speaks to the imposter syndrome in me as well. And yeah, I think that's just really solid advice for just about anybody trying to get into any creative endeavor. There's been no better time to get started than now, except for the fact that distribution is rough. There's a lot of oversaturation.
Yeah.
Zach and I have experienced that within the podcast situation as well, because these tools have become so democratized. But yeah, inspirationally, I think that is about the best advice we've got.
Yeah, I can't, give you any sort of advice that's going to tell you how to actually find success in the industry, but it's
Who can?
But you got to put yourself in the right place to be successful.
Yep. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
As I've heard and been told multiple
And
times.
then wistful music.
Yeah.
Wistful music starts playing in the background.
Yeah. Can you make us something for that, by the way, Karen?
Oh yeah. I probably have something.
No, I'll just sample something off Bandcamp.
Yeah. No, we'll take something from that initial backlog of things you don't want to share.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that would be actually fantastic.
Before we sign off, what are some socials that people will be able to find you at? And your music.
CameronPaxton.com is the easiest place to find the music for sure. Just because that just links directly to my Bandcamp. There's a link on my Bandcamp on the sidebar to my link tree, which has all my socials. But Cameron P Music is the letter P, not the word P. Cameron P Music at Twitter is where I post stuff about games. But yeah.
And I'm being presumptuous here, but just in case something does happen, because we are trying to talk with more developers, specifically some more indie studios. Mm-hmm. But in case anyone is listening and has been interested in, your process and working with you in the future, what is the best way to contact you in regards to, if someone's interested in exploring, you as a composer
projects.
On their project? Yeah, I worded that in a weird way.
I am one of the terminally online individuals, so you can reach out to me on Twitter. You can contact me through Bandcamp, cpaxtonmedia at Gmail will work. There's probably a way to find my phone number somewhere. So
we don't need to post that publicly.
we won't.
But I'm easy to get a hold of.
What's your social security number?
So that's
and the last 4 digits of your credit card.
As well as the CVV. I would really need that.
Of course, yeah. I'll just post a picture of it to my Twitter.
Oh, good.
Sick.
Good. Well, all financial jokes aside, and identity theft jokes aside.
Yeah.
It's been great to have you on, Cameron. Thank
Absolutely.
you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been amazing, man. It really has. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise, yeah. It's been nice.
And as a bit of a prelude to those listening, but also, if you're interested in Cameron, this season's going to end up being kind of potentially music heavy in terms of guests, because we've got one of my other friends who might be coming on if we can schedule the 3-hour EST to PST difference, who works in music not publishing, licensing. So it's lots of music.
And here I thought he was your friend.
Yeah, I know. How am I friends with someone in licensing? I know, it's horrific.
No, you couldn't even remember if it was licensing or publishing.
It was not publishing. I was just going brain dead. Yeah, no, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
And when I'm done with the quadrillion games I'm trying to finish, I actually do want to play Dome Keeper, because it's very rare that I look at an indie game and I am interested. That sounds so bad. I have the tendency to just get bored with indie games.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting at. And I've been watching a decent amount of the game footage, one through your videos, but also just kind of watching people play it. And I don't know. It's tickling an itch that I might need to scratch here once Zelda is finished. So 2 years is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
2 years I'll be able to play.
Roughly 400 hours later,
Yeah.
Zach will finally get around to playing Dome Keeper.
I totally understand.
I will say in less articulate verbiage that I was actually also quite interested by what I saw, so I'm going to play it. I've been watching a fair amount of footage. I've been listening to the OSTs and some of your outside music, and I'm looking forward to playing the game. Is it exclusively on Steam
for now,
or is it
well, Steam and GOG?
Okay, Steam and GOG. Okay, now I think this might have been a thing. Does GOG give you a higher payout than Steam?
That I don't know. That'd be a publisher question probably, but
okay, call the publisher right now.
Yeah.
No. I'll look into that. But whatever I can do to give you the higher payout, it looks like a really fun game. And once I figure that out, I will personally break my I hate Twitter rule,
dude.
And tweet out which one.
I kind of hate myself for even being on there, and I actually.
Same.
But you know, it's
Zach has to harangue me into doing one tweet a week.
Yeah. Yeah, but at least in this business,
and I missed mine yesterday. So
at least in games, it's still the place where everybody is, unfortunately. So maybe one day we can move away from it.
Well, if Elon has his way,
here's hoping. But if I can figure out which one gives you the better residuals for sales and whatnot, or the team at large, then I'll tweet that info out once I figure it out. But outside of that, I think we're pretty good. Again, like Zach said, thanks so much for coming on. Again, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've actually learned a lot this episode, which I enjoy doing. And you've just been like a wonderful, chill personality to have around.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on.
In our collective studio, which spans 2 time zones.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Cool. Thank you.
And thus we return. Sans Cameron this time. Sorry about that. But hey, I hope that you really enjoyed our conversation about composing music for indie games. This one specifically being obviously Dome Keeper, and just kind of hearing some of Cameron's story as to how he managed to find his way into this situation. And it's another one of those things where you don't necessarily think that much about where music comes from in indie games, and it's fascinating to kind of hear about the process, hear about everything. At least it was for me. Hopefully it was for you too, Zach. I'd have to imagine so, and then hopefully even more so for the listeners.
Just quick thanks again to Cameron for coming on the show, especially kind of short notice from when I had reached out to him. He's a really, really cool guy, so make sure to show him support on the various social media /project links that he had mentioned, and support the Dome Keeper project as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can pick it up on Steam. I'm actually about to install it on my Steam Deck here probably about as soon as we're done with this recording. And I'm really looking forward to digging into it and seeing what the game itself is actually all about. So yeah, outside of that, I suppose it's probably time to thank Beach Girl. Such a chore thanking Beach Girl for their exceptional music that they gave us for our intro and outro, as well as their full library of original songs that I enjoy listening to in my personal time. If you want to take on a chore, go find Beach Girl on Bandcamp, SoundCloud, Spotify, or wherever fine digital music can be found. It'll be the best chore you've ever done, I promise. Your ears will thank you, and your brain will feel better, and you'll be able to sound cool at the coffee shop when all of your friends don't know who Beach Girl is and then realize how fucking hard they rock.
And I'd like to thank eDougie Art, and I was about to be like, and the eye strain that they cause me, but they don't cause eye strain. In fact, they make my eyes better. If you look at eDougie Art, your eyes will be 20/20 vision within no time. Have any issue and need prism lenses? That will be resolved if you use eDougie Art. All right, I'm sorry. On a all serious note, eDougie Art is fantastic and helped us with our art for our podcast, our album art, our logo, all of that. We really do appreciate her, and she is fantastic and phenomenal. And you should all support her on Instagram or at Etsy, by looking her up at eDougie Art. That's at eDougie Art.
Yes, nothing bad over there. And it is technically medicine, so you need to check your insurance before you use it. But yeah, outside of that, at the risk of running longer, I suppose I'm going to sign off and do my signature. Goodbye!
And remember, do not stare directly in the sun for more than 2 minutes. You probably shouldn't even do it that long. Goodbye.
And don't look at the eclipse with your bare eyes, even if you're the president.
Or a bear.
Or a bear.
Yeah, no, your music's great, man. And also, welcome to the games industry. We all have imposter syndrome. At least all the sane people.